Joe Boyd Wright went missing from Shreveport, Louisiana on April 30th, 1963. Or more appropriately, he went missing from Delhi, Louisiana. At the time of his disappearance, he was 16 years old. NamUs lists him as white, 5'7", 120 to 150 pounds, with brown hair and hazel eyes. Joe had a scar on his left arm and was last seen wearing a khaki suit. He was reported missing from Shreveport and lived in the 400 block of Richmond Street in Delhi, Louisiana. He has no comparisons to his case. According to Google Maps, the distance between these cities is 2 hours. I'm unsure why he was reported missing in Shreveport and not in Delhi, but I know that later on the rest of his family members did end up moving over to Shreveport. I believe Joe would have been born around 1947 or 1948. His birthday doesn't seem to be listed anywhere officially. I decided to take a look at some unidentified bodies that are also listed on NamUs. The earliest found unknown body in Louisiana is a man found on Valentine's Day, 1975, in the Plaquemines Parish, Louisiana. There haven't been any comparisons to this case either. John Doe was estimated to have been 16 to 18 years old, 5'10" to 6 feet tall, and 150 to 160 pounds. There is no estimated time of death, so it's unknown how long this John Doe had been deceased. He had brown hair, brown eyes, slightly protruding front teeth, and was wearing a maroon and yellow long-sleeved Puritan, I assume, brand shirt. He had on blue Arrow brand pants with a brown belt, one gray sock, and one dark blue sock. He was white. Police found John Doe off Highway 23 on a farm road between Highway 23 and the Mississippi River near Alliance, Louisiana, according to NamUs. There are no surviving records or reports from either the coroner's office or the Plaquemines Parish Sheriff's Office. NamUs states that John Doe had all parts recovered with a recognizable face. Even though this John Doe was 10 years younger than Joe, I still think it's important to at least include him, as there haven't been any comparisons to his case. Though I do have to say I looked a little bit more into this John Doe, as he's listed on the Doe Network and a separate website from Louisiana itself, and for some reason NamUs did not point out that there was a suicide note provided with this John Doe that made me believe this was not Joe Boyd, but I will make a separate video about this John Doe later. Another John Doe was found on April 30th, 1978, strangely 15 years to the day that Joe went missing. John was found in the Orleans Parish, Louisiana, in the Mississippi River. All parts were recovered, though not recognizable. Decomposing/putrefaction, and NamUs states that John's mandible and maxilla were removed for future identification, though the location of the body is unknown. I assume that this means law enforcement have no idea of what was done to the rest of John Doe's body. He might be buried in an unknown grave, for all we know. John Doe's race was determined on the original case report. His age and sex were estimated from the jaw only. His hair color, eye color, height, and weight are unknown. His estimated time of death was 1977 to 1978, and the estimated age range is 28 to 40 years old. Joe Boyd would have been 30 or 31 during this time, so I think this Doe has a higher possibility of being him. There are also no comparisons to this case. On May 25th, 1977, a John Doe was found in St. John the Baptist Parish, Louisiana. The mandible and maxilla were removed for further identification, and the location of the body is unknown. Age and sex were determined by the jaw only. His Race cannot be estimated, actually, and John Doe has no comparisons to his case. He was estimated to have been 35 to 39 years old and estimated to have died in 1976 or 77. According to the Charlie Project, Joe Boyd left his home in Delhi, Louisiana, saying that he was going to change his name and never come back, and that his family would never be able to find him. He was never heard from again. Joe had 13 siblings, one of his sisters saying that he was often in trouble and felt unhappy at home. There's been no indication of his whereabouts since 1963. There is a thread about him on Web Sleuths, one user, Albion, linking a newspaper article from 1983. The news article from the Times in Shreveport is dated December 16, 1983. It talked about how a man who had 43 aliases, that was held in Texas recently on a minor charge, was believed to have been potentially Joe Boyd. The man went by the name Jack Wright, and he was arrested on December 3rd by a New Essex County deputy who saw him trying the doors of a jewelry store. Just for reference, New Essex County is basically the Corpus Christi area. An inquiry to the National Crime Information System was answered by 20 feet of computer paper, showing a 19-year record of petty crime, jail terms, 43 different aliases, and 9 social security numbers. The news about Jack Wright reached Shreveport, Louisiana, where 67-year-old Wilma Wright was awaiting any word from her son, Joe Boyd Wright. That, of course, ran away 20 years prior. One of the siblings, Stella Warren of Shreveport, said that a December 10th story from the Shreveport Journal about Wright's flair for names made the hair rise on her head. The more that she read, the more that she thought it was him. Stella said her brother left the family in Delhi 20 years before, saying that he'd change his name and never come back. He said, "Y'all will never be able to find me again." He said he was going to change his name. There were so many kids, and he was in trouble so much. He said Wrights never get a job in this town. A year after Jack, or Joe, had left home, the first entry on Jack Wright's criminal record was made. "I want to find him for my mother's sake. It's got her old, not knowing whether he's dead or alive. I just want him to come home," Stella said. Stella hoped to receive Jack Wright's mugshot from the Corpus Christi files in hopes of identifying her brother. I'm not sure if she ever did see the mugshot. Joe's mother had stated that she was sure she saw her son working in Shreveport a couple of times in the past 5 years. Jack Wright was last seen that Wednesday, December 14th, 1983, when Dallas County authorities bought him a bus ticket to Corpus Christi and gave him $5. New Essex County officers took him to Dallas when it was believed that he was John Monroe Smith, who was wanted for violation of probation on a 1982 car theft conviction, but his fingerprints did not match Smith's. "We tried to wrap him any way we could. We couldn't hold him because he wasn't wanted anywhere else," Sergeant DeShazo of the Dallas County Sheriff's Fugitive Division had stated. He said that he assumed Jack Wright returned to Corpus Christi. He was raising hell about wanting to go back to Corpus Christi. He was telling the truth, that he wasn't Smith. Stella said that published accounts of the aliases Jack Wright would use included family names. One of the many birth dates lacked one day of being his favorite sister's birthday, but it was Jack Wright's age and physical appearance that provided the most help to Stella. They said he was a white man, 36 years old, with brown hair and hazel eyes. I know I could identify him if I could see him, she was quoted as saying. And Joe's mother had stated, It would be the best Christmas present I could get if he could come home, but I've said that every year since he's been gone. I tried to do the math, and if Joe Boyd was 36 in 1983, then that would have meant he was born in 1947. His mother was 67 at the time, so she was likely to have been born in 1916, and she would have been 31 years old when Joe Boyd was born. There is a grave for Wilma. Wilma Ost Wright was born on March 5, 1916, in Tilton, Arkansas. She passed away on March 20th, 1989, in Keithville, Louisiana. She's buried at Forest Park Cemetery in Shreveport, and she was 73 years old. Interestingly, her obituary lists Joe B. as one of her surviving sons. Joe's father also has a Find a Grave page. Cecil Johnny Wright was born on May 6, 1909, in Tiplersville, Mississippi. He passed away on December 12, 1978, in Shreveport, Louisiana. He's buried at Forest Park Cemetery and was 69 years old. Joe is listed as one of his surviving sons in the obituary. At least 3 of Joe's siblings have passed away and are also on Find a Grave, though the family tree is a little convoluted because I don't believe all of the siblings' names were listed everywhere, so I can't confirm exactly, how many or who is all left. Further, I don't know whose DNA would be the one compared to on NamUs to see if any unidentified people would be Joe Boyd. The 3 siblings that are listed on Find a Grave and connected to their parents' pages are Estelle, Elsie, and Rudell. Rudell Wright Malone was born on June 28, 1942, in Light, Arkansas. She passed away on May 18, 2015, in Stonewall, Louisiana, and she was buried at Forest Park Cemetery West in Shreveport. She was 72. Elsie Mae Wright Galbraith was born on April 24, 1937, in Etowah, Arkansas. She passed away on March 3, 2018, in Shreveport, and she was cremated. She was 80 years old. Estelle Wright Ibarb was born on August 11, 1935, in Monticello, Arkansas. She passed away on April 15, 2020. She's buried at Forest Park Cemetery West in Shreveport, and she was 84 years old. I believe that Estelle is the Stella that was in the newspaper articles from 1983. A record shows that a Chad Joseph Wright was an alias for Joseph Boyd Wright and had lived in Oklahoma from around 1986, 2000, 1995, 2001, and potentially 2007 to 2008. It's a little convoluted, of course. And this person had listed their birthday as May 17th, 1948. I thought this was interesting because if this was Joe Boyd and he was using yet another alias, well, here's Chad Joseph Wright. The 1940 census states that Joe's father, Cecil, was 30 years old, head of the household, and worked as a laborer. Wilma was 24, and 3 of Joe's siblings were listed: Floyd, Margie, and Elsie. Floyd was 6, Margie 4, and Elsie 2. I believe that Margie is also actually Estelle. I looked back to compare, and I noticed that on Find a Grave, Estelle's middle name wasn't listed, so I believe her name might have been Estelle Margie, or some sort of Marjorie. Estelle Margie Wright. It would have made sense, at least numerically anyway, because 1940, Margie would have been 4, going on 5, and Estelle would have also been 4 or 5 years old in 1940. The 1950 census shows that Cecil was 40, Wilma 33, Floyd 17, Margie E 14, Elsie 12, and there were other siblings listed. What I found very interesting was that for the 1940 census, there should have been, I think, a couple of more siblings listed, but there weren't. I'm not sure what was up with that. But the 1950 census lists majority of the siblings, all the children that were born. So, of course, there was Floyd, Margie, Elsie, and then James, who was 11, Dorothy, 10, Rudell, 8, Lloyd, 6, Mary S., who was 4, Joe B., 3, and Cornelius, I think maybe potentially supposed to be Cornelius, who was 2 years old. Family Search shows that Wilma's middle name was Louise. And so that might show up on census records, or at least Wilma L. on a census record. Some of the other siblings that were listed in Family Search were, of course, Floyd, Dorothy, and Lloyd. Floyd Everett Wright was born on September 23, 1933 in Arkansas. He passed away on March 26, 1999 in Caddo, Louisiana. There doesn't seem to be a Find a Grave page for him, but he was 66 years old. Dorothy Wright was born in 1940 in Arkansas, and she passed away on November 6, 1998. I also could not find a Find a Grave page for her. Lloyd Wright was born on March 23, 1943, in Marked Tree, Arkansas. He passed away on November 3rd, 2022 in Greenwood, Louisiana. At least that's what was listed on Family Search for some reason. And he's buried at Forest Park Cemetery West in Shreveport, Louisiana. He was 78 years old. Lloyd's Find a Grave page doesn't have any connections to it at the moment, but it mentions his mother, father, and other family members. Interestingly, it stated that he was preceded in death by 5 sisters and 3 brothers, though I'm unsure if any of those brothers would have counted Joe Boyd. I'm unsure who all the siblings are. I tried to put it down on a list, and the siblings that we know who would have passed away by 2022 would have been Elsie, Dorothy, Estelle, and Rudell, but another sister who I don't know. And then the only brother that we know for sure who would have passed away would have been Floyd. So that means there are 3 siblings that have passed away we don't know the names of. I just say this and look at the family tree because in my mind I believe that if we have some information to see what sibling passed away when, perhaps we could find out just any small bits of information that could lead us to records or search for records to see what paper trail maybe Jack Wright or Joe Boyd left behind. I went back to the Jack Wright lead, and I ended up looking for any other articles on him, and I found another article that was from the Corpus Christi Times that was posted on December 15th, 1983. And very, very interestingly, this article actually posted his picture. So Jack Wright, of course, was arrested in New Essex County after a deputy constable had seen him trying the doors of a jewelry store in the 5 Points area. The article states that Joe Boyd was the 10th of his mom's 14 children, leaving 6 days before his 16th birthday. Joe Boyd Wright was born on February 23, 1947, in Lepanto, Arkansas, and was the son of a sharecropper. Like the rest of the family, he picked and chopped cotton, sold firewood, and gathered pecans from an early age. I couldn't find any more news articles, though, about Jack Wright, nor could I find any on Joe Boyd. The biggest lead was absolutely the article from 1983. And that made me think, okay, so who might have submitted Joe Boyd as missing on NamUs? And so I went back and I looked, and the NamUs page for Joe Boyd was created on September 18th, 2020. So at least some of these siblings that I had listed before were still alive, or a couple of them were still alive when the NamUs page was created. And to go back, I do want to point out that potentially finding any information about his siblings could have maybe shown what aliases Jack Wright had used. But I really couldn't find any information on anyone. And I was kind of surprised that there wasn't any newspaper articles over the decades, even after Jack Wright from 1983, that would have said, yeah, this is my brother and he's missing. There was never any articles like that. Truly, I don't know what could have happened to Joe after this point. If Jack Wright was him, which honestly I believe it was. I believe Jack Wright was him. He may have changed his name, though, after the article was written. I wouldn't be surprised if he was somehow still alive and didn't even know he was considered missing in a national database. He would be 77 years old if he was still alive, which might be a possibility. Because of the lack of information in this case, I don't know, honestly, what could have happened to Joe. If Jack Wright was him, then we know that those John Does from before aren't. But even still, there haven't been any comparisons or just any DNA matches or exclusions to anybody's case listed here. Jack Wright seems to have just gone missing after that newspaper article, which leads me to believe that it must have been Joe in some ways, you would think. Jack Wright probably changed his name once again so that he wouldn't have been caught in the news. If Joe passed away, there's also the likely chance that he could have been known by a completely different name, even if it was Jack Wright. Let's say Jack Wright changes his name, then passes away. None of his family would know, because no one knows what name he used.